Our next speaker is Ian Bowell he's the CTO of Fauchier Partners, and is going to talk about innovation in the fund management space.
Good evening, everybody. It's probably worth saying, although I work for Fauchier Partners, these are all my opinions and not I'm not here representing Fauchier for what it's worth. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of background about me. So this is very much my view, or the view of a hedge fund or financial fund management CTO on innovation and the kinds of things that I've seen take place in technology and fund management generally, and IT and finance in a lot of different areas. My experience comes from software development, training developers, providing support in finance, investment banking, running various different startups in different countries, more recently in hedge funds and then fund of funds. Obviously, you can either do it by the seat of your pants or by a sort of a more organized approach. You can take the rapid application development approach or an agile approach. And in my experience, agile is certainly great, but in an internal innovative environment, you need to make sure to communicate to the business and ensure that they are integral to your innovation, or at least to your development process. And the same, I think, goes for external customers. So this is the sorts of things I'm seeing here are based mainly around the internal customer within a financial services organization. But I think the same sorts of things can be said for the external customers, if you're trying to innovate. So as I said, it's my view on technology and hedge fund of funds industry most recently. And I think it's worth noting there's a lot of commonality with the kind of experience that you have with startups, the kinds of issues you're dealing with customers and getting buy-in for your ideas and your products and so on. And the business as a whole is possibly not as mysterious as you might think, as hopefully we'll see. And I'll provide various examples of where technology has been used to innovate in financial services or fund management in particular. And hopefully you'll find some of this interesting. And I'm going to try and provide you with some coherent thoughts and not ramble. So do pull me up if I seem to be going off track. So what do we mean by fund management? Apologise if some of you already know a lot of this sort of thing, but a fund of funds basically invests in other hedge funds. So for me, having worked in the hedge fund environment directly for a hedge fund prior to my current role, this is sort of like a mile-high view on the industry as a whole. And again, a lot of the work I've done with peers and so on has been about finding what are the common issues and common technology challenges that we find in delivering technology into the fund management business in general. So what the fund of funds does is to select a few dozen hedge funds to invest in out of several hundred and invest money on behalf of clients. Quite straightforward and simple. Applying common sense, it can be pretty complex given the range of investments that are made by underlying hedge funds and the kinds of analysis that we have to do to make sense of all of that. There are, I have to say, some pretty dedicated and rigorous people, but again, that's nothing new there. Many other fields have the same kind of dedication. So it's traditional investment management on the buy side. Traditionally, you have this idea of consolidated access. You take a couple of million from 10 different people and suddenly you've got 20 million to invest and so on. Fund of funds don't invest directly in the markets except perhaps in foreign exchange to hedge positions and currency risk and so on. So risk management is a very important part of what we do. It's across multiple assets. It's often prior to trade. It helps to be able to look at a whole range of different scenarios. And I think the area where current technology innovation can lend the most value is in visualization of that risk and pulling together all the various different, or a coherent way of looking at the risks associated and being able to make sensible calls on what to do next. And also then to put together portfolios that are composed according to the investor's goals. As we mentioned earlier, for startups, it's very much important to identify what it is that your investor or your VC, as it happens, is looking to get out of the investment, and vice versa. So one of the areas we're looking to innovate is by providing more bespoke customization for those portfolios. Basically differentiating ourselves from the competition and providing perhaps potentially a similar interface that you see at the moment in terms of sizing your cloud requirements, your cloud technology requirements, applying that shopping interface, if you like, to portfolio management. And other industries are doing that. There's the idea of a wrapped fund is quite common in Australia, New Zealand, and of course, then you have the associated accounting required to keep track of all of these various different bits of funds. Due diligence, as we mentioned earlier, for investment in startups is very important in the fund of funds business also, simply because we do start out by investing in startups. Other small hedge funds, incubator hedge funds, are effectively startups. Ideally, people have track records and so on, and we do the same kind of due diligence on the people and the approach and so on. Generally, there's a 2-year initial period where a fund will start up and start looking for investment, and will start up very much in the same way that a technology startup would get going, with investment, personal investment, and so on and so forth. And over that 2-year period, we will look and watch, and then once we make the decision to actually invest, we will do so on a small scale, 10 million or something of that sort, and grow from there. Much like the kinds of crises we've seen, the success is not overnight. The kind of trading we're doing doesn't take place on a minute-by-minute or hour-by-hour basis. So therefore there are lags and there are delays in return and profitability. So the profitability and so on that we're seeing now was planned 2, 3, 4 years ago. I'll look at the typical success or the performance cycle of a hedge fund in a minute, and I want to just at this point focus on how important technology is to support the finance, accounting, reconciliation part of the process in hedge funds, and that in turn being able to provide a coherent view on things that are estimated versus finalized it seems like such a small thing, but a huge amount of time and effort goes into establishing whether something is in an estimated state early or midway through the month, or in fact actually finalized further on down towards the end of the month. And technology is what can make the difference in terms of being able to properly keep track of all these different states of, as I say, dozens of hedge funds. And in turn, that track record and that financial information is what's used to provide test data into the market and allow back testing of performance and different approaches to the market. Client communication is a completely different field further on down the line again, where technology is a focus at the moment, trying to figure out the best way to provide information to clients either through the web or taking into account the cycle of investor relations, which I'll come back to shortly also. Again, very much like startups. And then there's lots of other challenges that we have to concern ourselves with, liquidity in the market, credit, overnight cash management, foreign exchange, all sorts of, too much to go into really, but just to give you a sense of how much we're trying to keep track of and why we need technology to give us the edge, I suppose. So typically, a hedge fund will have an idea or theme or strategy maintained in a book. To give it a layman's viewpoint, it is a book much like a bookie's book. It'll be a series of assumptions or bets, if you like, that are taken over a 1 to 5 year period. So the first 1 to 3 years generally establishes the track record of a fund or a book or a strategy or an idea. not generally of the chief investment officer themselves. The chief investment officer will already have a 10, 15 year track record in the industry. So it's the breakout, the new idea that we're looking to establish a track record for. It's worth noting here, I'm talking about a chief investment officer here, not a chief information officer, as some of you, it's worth noting the difference of that acronym there. Then after the first 1 to 3 years, there's usually a 2 to 5 year period where we'll get anywhere between 5 and 30% over LIBOR. That's the fundamental goal, the benchmark that most funds are trying to achieve at any given time. And then, for whatever reason, people get fat, things go flat, and many hedge funds or books and strategies and products within a hedge fund follow this 1 to 3 year startup, 2 to 5 year linear performance, and then things flatten off again, at which point you've got to decide what to do next. Are you going to go for an exit strategy? Have you had enough? Are you going to recycle what you've done? Are you going to dovetail with a new idea? And that's the transition that there's the most danger, if you like, in the hedge fund environment. So I would say that again is much like the sort of experience you'll see in as a technology startup. So going back to client communication, the client relationship management tools are very important to hedge funds and fund of funds, and putting in place good technology that supports all of those issues is certainly important to a CTO in a hedge fund or fund of funds. The CRMs that we're looking for are generally pretty customized, so they will have specific fields and hypernumber environments, perhaps dealing with subscriptions and redemptions from hedge funds, rather than just simply who's my contact and what's their phone number. It needs to be extended and specific for the fund environment. It's common to see work done based around Java and Salesforce, but the .NET equivalent is developed by a company called Digitaire, and they're quite an interesting case study, if you like, of technology in the hedge fund and fund of fund space. Equally, it's possible that more open technologies could be used, but these two Java-based and .NET-based technologies are certainly preferred in the technology environment for funds and finance in general. It's worth noting that the cloud makes an appearance here, in that Digitaire have their, as well as Salesforce obviously being a cloud implementation, Digitaire do also have their hosted version on Amazon Web Services. And there are issues with Azure, Microsoft's cloud hosting environment, supporting the financial services environment. It's not quite as good, and persistence is really the key issue that Azure has not addressed to date, but is on the verge of addressing going forward. So we'll see some changes in that area in terms of Microsoft's ability to compete with Salesforce and Amazon. And edge versus hubs is certainly an important consideration, particularly when starting up new offices or being close to clients on a global basis. So there's a view that you could take the view that financial institutions don't innovate. There are differences, as we've talked about already, between retail banks, investment banks, and hedge funds. And ultimately, it all comes down to risk and risk management and the appetite for risk and the agility of those organizations to innovate. I would say Citibank is among one of the better organizations for retail banking innovation, and as I should, for full disclosure, say I am a Citibank account holder, and I've recently gotten an email from them telling me that I can take a photograph of the front and back of my check, email it to Citibank, and they will deposit the money for me, which is, I think, quite an interesting. Maybe you've heard of it before, it may be old hat, but I thought that was quite interesting. Credit Suisse, another organization that I've worked for, focuses on automation of technology management, and as a result has quite a high ratio of IT staff to to the business, really. And you could say that's an unnecessary expense, and certainly they took that view and let a few people go. But ultimately, the high ratio of staff and getting the balance right between the right number of staff within your organization, in a hedge fund, in a small organization, and then providing the right amount of agility and business reliability and so on is a constant challenge in technology. Ultimately, you don't want to break the bank. I mean, it's as simple as that. You don't want to put in place a new piece of technology or a new idea, a new process that causes the bank to lose money. And again, there are plenty of examples of that out there. Why innovate? Simple competitive advantage. Really, the real truth is it makes life easier. Whatever you're doing, it has to be focused on. People won't buy into it if it's not going to change the way that they access their information. Maybe more money, it's obvious. New customers by geography, different regions, different regulations. There are always new opportunities, regulatory opportunities being coming about. I mean, with Fauchier as a fund of funds, most of our customers are in pension fund space, and the European laws versus the US laws versus laws in the UK, Australia, Japan, they all have different effects or different impacts on the kinds of things that our customers are looking for. So we have to provide a technology platform that can give all of those different markets the sort of systems they need. Ultimately, one of the most important points is that the customization that we're seeking, the agility that we're trying to get from innovation, should be standardized and should be effortless. Sounds like a very simple goal, but the task, the attempt to get rid of Excel as an environment for storing important financial data is still an ongoing battle, and I'm actually quite interested to hear about what hypernumbers can do and see if there's I look forward to many more success stories around that particular goal. So, how to innovate in financial services? It's simple stuff. Looking at doing good business analysis. Don't ask a go-between. Just go out and ask the trader or the client director directly. Knowing what the different options are, the alternatives, is again a key consideration for any new innovation. You're always going to get asked, is this cheaper if I bought? Why do I have to hire a bunch of people to do this? Why can't I just go out and rent something in the cloud? You've got to have a clear picture of what the competition, both internally and externally. If you don't get the timing right, if it's late, forget about it. Well, maybe you'll get a second chance if you're late. Late isn't so bad, but if it's broken, definitely forget about it. So testing is extremely important in any kind of innovation. I won't go into details, but there's a whole raft of different scenarios where testing or being too ambitious has resulted in something that was otherwise good, resulted in failure. And just keep trying if it doesn't work out. So technology is there to drive the business innovation, not the other way around. If it doesn't serve a particular business need, it's not going to get airtime in financial services, generally speaking. There's always a possibility of doing something new, but perhaps it's an old system and you're just improving it. I think there's an interesting area of new innovation around making things that are generally pretty boring, filling out, entering data, filling out forms and so on, and turning it into a game actually has quite a lot of potential in the financial services environment in general. So I won't go into that in too much detail. Probably running out of time, but if I take a look at where innovation is required, ultimately it's about timely decision support and the presentation of those decisions. whether on a yearly basis all the way down to a microsecond basis if you're working in high frequency trading, whether you're innovating around a trend or a mean reversion situation. It depends. We can go into more detail about what that all means. There's all sorts of alpha, beta, delta, vega flowing around the financial services world. There's room for innovation around trade processing, getting to what's referred to as straight through processing, and as I mentioned already, coming up with good systems for pre and post trade risk, and potentially coming up with standards. There are very few standards around risk management, at least in terms of the communication of risk metrics across the organization. And all of this has to be visualized on a good old piece of paper, but also on 8 screens. Again, the number of applications where a developer has sat down with a single screen and developed for one screen and had his lovely dialog box pop up in the middle of the screen, but then a trader runs it on his 8th rightmost screen and the dialog box still pops up on the first screen on the desktop. That's such a very simple flaw, but you've got to test, or you've got to work effectively in your target environment, and putting in place good security and allowing collaboration so that people can work together, again, is extremely important in the fund management, financial services environment. And if you have a read-only device like a tablet, having a way to write transactional data back to the corporate database is, again, a very current and important theme for trade. The more and more people on the go, more people are using mobile devices and so on. And lastly, people want to be able to self-serve. They don't want to have to call an IT guy to get their work done for them, or to come up with a new chart. Latency is a big issue. There's room for innovation there on the network side of things, but as a colleague said, if you try to achieve zero latency, you end up with, you're assuming infinite cost, so that's not always going to work out. And data, management of data, figuring out what's used and unused in a scientific way, and turning that information is another big area of focus in the near future. Coming up with ways to standardize and homogenize regulation. As I mentioned earlier, there are all these different regulations around the world. Coming up with a business model that will allow you to address all of those different variations with the lowest common denominator, I guess, is an area for there's an area of opportunity there. This is pretty much again stating there is a big opportunity in fund management and financial services for technology innovation before we start making money again, before the next financial crisis occurs. So there's lots of systems and technologies and tools that can foster innovation, can help things move forward. A lot of them you'll be aware of. You may not be aware of some of the hardware innovation out there on using graphic processors for financial calculations, using the routing devices in between various networks for actual calculation of making trading decisions. And I think I'm running out of time, so ultimately it's about whether or not you are saving money in the long term. Everything's cyclical in technology innovation, so there's always a new opportunity coming along, either on the business ideas, the network connecting us to the cloud, or the technology markets themselves. So next steps, look for a new idea across a range of different connected disciplines or areas of experience. Always look for problems. Try and get people to start working on your idea, ideally for free or out of hours, possibly extra credit, that kind of thing. Get some kind of income finance. Get people to buy or rent cloud hardware. Make it easy for people to access. Again, that rule is true for Google. It's true in the financial services organization internally. Don't forget security, tracking, auditing. as the note says, brakes are there to make the Formula One car go faster, not to make it slower. Prove your worth and then maintain your idea and go get the next idea. So those are my thoughts. This is my contact information here and in London on Gmail. I'll be spending more time in New York, so feel free to use LinkedIn. I haven't started using Twitter. Not sure if I should. I have used it climbing to tell people that I was okay, but it was useful for broadcast information like that. Facebook is not viewed as a particularly useful tool within the fund management space. It's not quite the right medium, but that could change, and Meetup is definitely a good space. Thank you very much.
How do you think you stand against other sort of areas in the sort of startup industry in terms of the level of tech you have? I mean, you'd imagine that the sheer amount of cash floating around in that area would mean you're way ahead, but if you're still...
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, we're doing, the technology is part of our competitive advantage, so the systems, that I suppose I haven't talked at all about what we actually use internally, and those systems are part and parcel of what differentiates us from the business in the way that we're able to present and analyse and present our risk management, present our investment strategies, and so on. So I wouldn't say we don't spend hand over fist, and certainly in the last 4 or 5 years following your last attempt at your last investment cycle, we've certainly underinvested in technology. So we're looking to spend more in technology in the near future.
I guess the question is sort of aimed at the sort of if you're at the cutting edge and you're really sort of moving to new technologies, trying to take advantage of the latest developments and everything, are you using .NET and Silverlight?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. The intranet is built on .NET and Silverlight at the moment, but we are.
Sorry, perhaps the question wasn't clear. The idea, the implication was that .NET and Silverlight might not be the cutting edge in
the near future. Yeah, no, we're certainly aware of that. I agree.
Resources, why aren't you using the more advanced technologies?
Well, I suppose it's down to the size of the team and the skills in that team. But we are aware that HTML5 is the way we should be going, particularly if we want to support tablets and other devices for our extranet, intranet. All right, thank you.